Hello everyone and welcome back to Always Watching. Today we're discussing the masterpiece Warfare. So briefly, Warfare follows a platoon of Navy SEALs who are ambushed after a routine surveillance mission. Based on a true story, the script is pieced together by the memories of the men who survived. Warfare for me is an instant classic and easily Alex Garland's best film. The movie starts off with what feels like another war movie and then quickly turns into one of the most intense sensory experiences. We are introduced to a very large group of Navy SEALs, and then this group is divided into two. We are introduced to the first half of this group during the first phase of this mission and the second half during the rescue. Not the way the characters were divided into equal screen time gave everyone a chance to shine. There were no weak links in this chain. When the mission starts, you're not really sure why they're assigned to this post, and it almost doesn't really matter by the end. We never see the insurgents up close, but we get enough of a look to know how much of a danger they pose. Most of the film takes place in a family home filled with civilians who are just terrified and forced to basically just wait and hope for the best. The way these soldiers use these household items to set up was extremely well done. It goes from this family home to this military outpost. They wake this family up in the middle of the night. The movie makes it very clear that these are just civilians, and now they have this burden of just surviving with them. First, the mission seems very routine. You're not really sure what you're looking at or why you're looking at it. So the soldiers appear very relaxed, they're very upbeat. Everything changes when they start being attacked by the men they're surveying. And the grenade that sets everything off took me by surprise. And I would say everything about this movie took me by surprise. And in terms of war movies, we're very used to them being overly dramatic. These soldiers are the best of the best. They are Navy SEALs, and yet their reaction is so human. They don't try to act tough. This never turns into a Rambo situation. And I felt the dialogue was very grounded in reality. In fact, there was minimal dialogue because they were in shock most of the time. I was struck by how the film really doesn't want you to side with anyone. The whole time I was watching, I just wished this never happened. I felt really bad for this family who had to wait it out, and also for these soldiers that really to have to fight this senseless war. Iraq, knowing what we know now, is one of the most genocidal wars in American history. I felt this movie was a very realistic depiction of the consequences of war and what happens to men and women who are deployed. When the insurgency starts to attack, you feel the fear immediately. Every soldier was shell-shocked, some more shell-shocked than others. And the closer each soldier gets to the violence, the more shell-shocked they become, and I thought that was such a great detail, especially the longer they stay locked up in this house. You sense their fear and uncertainty, and then this fear and uncertainty gets worse when an IED goes off. And when this IED went off, I mean, I literally was like, this movie is really just a sensory experience. Like, I gasped. After the IED, I assumed the movie would turn into a shootout between these two sides. And what I was really impressed by was how the movie kept us very focused on the soldiers. We never leave the house, and we become less concerned with this insurgency and more concerned with how everyone in this house is going to keep it together. After the IED, two soldiers were left brutally maimed. One soldier passed out from his injuries, and I actually assumed he was dead, and the other is just left screaming in agony. And these soldiers now have the task of not only making it out alive, but keeping the wounded in one piece. And their reactions were so chilling. All they could do is go through the motions. They were basically in survival mode. There are no words of encouragement, no corny speeches. And even if someone tried to put in some words of encouragement, you could tell it was really forced. And they really just They could barely speak, let alone move. One of the soldiers, I think his name was Ray, and he actually gives, I think, one of the strongest performances, has to keep Sam alive, and Sam is the one who's screaming in agony. And the whole time, he can barely look at the wound. And he has this task of trying to keep it from getting infected. And everything becomes an ordeal. I mean, simply trying to get the morphine, trying to clean up the wound. You can tell they're just shaking. They know what to do, but they're just not really able to do it. And I really appreciated how no one is able to take the lead. Eric, their platoon leader, tries, but at some point he just admits, like, I don't know what to do. And it's not that he's unable to come up with a plan. He just can't get himself together fast enough to think. You see him pacing around the room, trying to avoid eye contact with the injured, and eventually he just sits on the bed, paralyzed, unable to do a thing. The sound design was incredibly, I think, one of the best I've ever seen, because it gets you inside their head. It kind of goes from character to character, like seamlessly. And so every time we're focused on a character, we can kind of see what they're thinking or how they're perceiving the events based on the sound. When the rescue team arrives, the film takes an even darker turn. Because of the IED, they have to get support in order to be rescued. I'm assuming because they don't want to lose any more time. And I think this is when the movie subtly zooms out. I just kept thinking, you put these men in the line of fire and now they have to wait to be approved, because the issue isn't equipment. These men are completely outnumbered. They never stood a chance. They never should have been here in the first place. Because we don't see the insurgency that much, we just get glimpses into them. And it's very eerie how they kept increasing in numbers. And it constantly feels like they're going to be raided at any time. Like, I actually thought the house was going to blow up at some point. Jake, the leader of the second platoon, I believe, is very calm and understanding. They never pressure any of the traumatized soldiers to get it together. They never scream at them or try to, have these corny moments of encouragement. Instead, they calmly guide them out. And even within the second team, they had to fight their way to them. And we don't see the fight, but by the time they get there, they look traumatized themselves. And although these are very elite soldiers, no amount of training can prepare you for the violence and trauma war brings. Each soldier is naturally repelled by the violence. They don't want to look at the bloodshed. There are so many moments in the film where soldiers are reluctant, not because they don't want to do their job, but they know that doing their job could get them killed. And I love the reactions. I mean, whether it be trying to get a bag from another room or trying to clear out the roof. Like, there's always a moment of pause because the fear sets in. It's like, yes, I'm trained to do this, but I also don't want to die. The ending was really eerie because we get a glimpse of just how outnumbered they are, and it really dawns on you that they never stood a chance. And in general, if you zoom out, knowing what we know now, it makes you wonder how many of these missions turned out exactly in this way or even more. I think the movie adds a degree of humanity, not just to the civilians who were unfairly impacted, but to the soldiers as well. When you think about the family and all these families whose houses were used as military outposts, they can't do anything about it, and they're forced to rebuild their lives, rebuild their homes. Like, watching that family come out of the room and seeing how their house was destroyed was devastating. And in terms of these soldiers, it's have to go back and do it again. I think the way this movie was shot, it really invites the audience to ask, why was this happening in the first place? And my only regret is that it happened at all. And my only hope is that it never happens again. And so this is an instant classic to me. This is like, as soon as it ended, I wanted to watch it again. I felt every minute. And I was so impressed about the number of commentaries you can make in such a short period of time. And so if you've seen it, please let me know.